Welcome back to lesson 2 of critical thinking, our logic class. We're still looking in chapter 1, starting with page 6. We'll do just a short review. In critical thinking, the first week, we recognize that critical thinking is a systematic evaluation of beliefs by rational standards. Yep, it's about what you believe. Now, we can lengthen that definition. It's a systematic evaluation or formulation of beliefs or statements, but by rational standards. But basically, we're just looking at an evaluation, systematic formulation of beliefs by rational standards. Yep, it's about what you believe. Is the sky blue? Are we truly free? Will government ruin our life? Are they really hiding something? Are there aliens? But wait just a minute here. First things first, let's start with the simple things. If you really want to live, think critically, evaluate, examine stuff. Don't just accept everything that everyone says. Have a voice. We need to listen. We need to analyze. Notice what people are saying. As Socrates said some 400 years before Christ, he said the unexamined life is not even worth living. And it isn't. So we offer some critical ways and logical ways of thinking. Good thinking, critical thinking offers us some good logical skills, principles, concepts, and we'll get them and master them, and you'll have skills that will apply to all areas and arenas of your life. You'll be able to explore concepts that you thought were just for the nerds or the bookworms or, for the smart people, the big wigs. When you learn these skills, you'll be one of those bigwigs, one of those smart people, because you'll be able to think and evaluate and analyze. You'll be able to think for yourself. You'll be able to defend yourself against the people that just talk and talk and talk and don't ever shut up. Because you'll be able to defend against their errors, their manipulations and prejudice, and you'll have some tools in this class. We will learn how to think well and think properly. It's a logical way of doing things. We're not going to all turn into Spock. I'll mention him again, but we will have some good critical thinking skills. So logical thinking will help you to prevent others from duping you. Okay, these skills will help you to identify bias, prejudice, and other leanings that skew the truth, even when you're thinking from your own perspective. In order to determine what we believe justifiably, we must be open to other people's points of view, be a little tolerant of opposing perspectives. We got to stay focused and be able to assess fairly arguments and evidence. And I think we can show you how to do those things without a bias. Critical thinking does not mean to be passive. It doesn't mean that we should be refusing to consider alternative notions. In fact, it's open to them. We need to learn to not conform to a group think or a think tank. We shouldn't be controlled by biases or stereotypes, or even for that matter, wishful thinking. You learn to be more thoughtful and considerate and open-minded. So there's an argument. An argument is not arguing and yelling and screaming at each other. It's a real formula. We're not doing math here. We're doing some thinking skills, but it is a formula of words. Okay, there are premises, there are statements in which some of these statements are supporting other statements, and they end up with a conclusion. That is the formula. Premises, and adding more premises to it, and then coming to a conclusion. See on page 6 for some of these statements. And some of these statements are really goofy. Some of them may be very beneficial. Some and statements aren't necessarily helpful in an argument. But it could be if you're just saying, hey, I am cold. But a statement like a triangle has 3 sides doesn't help much. It's a description, but it's not getting us to do anything. I see blue spots before my eyes. Again, you're just making a statement. Whether it's true or not, rap music is better than punk rock. These are all statements. They're not arguments, but they might be a part of an argument if done properly. So on page 8, there are some arguments. You go across the next page and there's some arguments there. They're very simple. And on the next page, they're broke down, and below they're broken down so that you can see the premises and the conclusions very clearly. The Wall Street Journal says that people should invest heavily in stocks. Therefore, investing in stocks is a smart move. That is an argument. That would be a smart move if they're doing well. And number 3, when Judy drives her car, she's always late. Since she's driving her car, she'll be late. Okay, that is an argument. Too bad for Judy, huh? Hope your name isn't that. Number 6, no one should buy a beer brewed in Canada. Old Guzzler beer is brewed in Canada, so no one should buy it. That's an argument. It doesn't necessarily mean they're good arguments, and you may not agree with them. You don't have to agree with every argument, especially when it comes to taste or flavors. But they're usually doing that to provide some reason for you to buy a product. So that's a different art of persuasion, which we're not doing here. We're looking at how to argue and how to formulate arguments. They give reasons to support, prove some sort of claim. And so here's some statements. Cost of a new fighter plane, $650 million. And the fighter bombers cost $1.2 billion. The administration intends to fund this. This particular statement, it's not totally just like the one on page 9. Very similar. And it is not an argument. These are just a series of statements. But we need to understand how an argument works and what they're doing. It's a process of reasoning, right? They give some sort of ideas and a thrust to it. And these things that are doing that in the premises are called inferences. And this may be about the fighter plane. I think I can do this, yes. It is not an argument, just a list of statements. You might infer that maybe someone's saying, oh, they're too expensive, or maybe they're really, really good, who knows? Not sure what they're doing with this, but right now we see that they're just a bunch of statements. I would suggest as we go through this, not while you're watching this video, but maybe before or after, it might introduce you to this chapter. Afterwards, read the chapter. It'll definitely help you, and you'll need to read parts of it to get some of the information for the assignments. An argument about military readiness, as I presented before, just some statements about it. Well, here, now I'm just saying here the DP says that any weapon that costs more than 50 million apiece will impair our military readiness. Their cost of a new fighter is 650 million. The fighter bombers cost 1.2 billion. So we should never impair our readiness. Therefore, the administrator should cancel these projects. That is an argument. Whether it's good or bad, whether the statements in this are, whether the statements in that argument were correct or not, one will have to do some research. But nonetheless, that is an argument. Now, there are some explanations that might need happening. Justifications that may need to go on. An argument gives us reasons for believing that something is the case. That's the basis of an argument, okay? It is this. It gives us reasons. That's what an argument is. They're giving us reasons for something. And these reasons are a justification. They are answering the question as to why. I'm using this word, so be sure to pay attention to it. It's on one of the worksheets. Justification answers the question as to why. Explanations kind of do the same thing, but they're not quite the same. They tell us why or how something is the case. They don't always answer why. But we have some motives, there are reasons, there's a rationale in an argument, there's some justifications, some explanations, maybe it's an excuse or it's a validation for something. In logic, we do what to persuade. We try to change people's minds maybe, but it's the what that we're doing. We're dealing with the facts, the what things, explanations and reasons, justifications. We're not trying to persuade here. This is not a rhetoric class. You'll hear that again. It's not a speech. We're not trying to motivate people with arguments. We're not trying to get a feeling of a big hooray, yay. We're just being a Spock, if you've seen Star Trek. Just giving straightforward reasons and maybe truth, which should be involved in this. Page 10 has 3 paragraphs about different things. One paragraph on page 10. The first one is about alcohol. The next one is about a Catholic priest. And then the third one then is about maybe changing times or the history or something. But none of these are arguments. I want you to read them. They are blowing. They are part of someone's letter to the editor in some newspaper somewhere. They are opinion pieces of people. They're just venting. They're just making statements, but they are not making an argument. Okay, so recognize that. On a statement is just one of the parts of an argument. You know, they might be in these 3 passages that I mentioned about alcohol or a priest or the history of our nation. Maybe they could use those as an argument, but they aren't in these cases. They're just blowing. But you do need an assertion that something is or is not the case. You need some premises. You need some statements that give support to that. Minor, major, valid or invalid. And it's reaching a conclusion. A statement that the premises are trying to support. And to do this, we sometimes find them with particular words. On page 11, Premises are often are just basic statements. This is, that is. They might say because, or in view of, or given that, or as since, or something. There's a whole list here. Or further conclusions might be similar. Therefore, ergo, I like that, and it's a Latin term for therefore. Thus, consequently. But this is what an argument should look like. They'll have the two premises with a conclusion that may or may not have these particular indicator words. So you can't always look for them and expect to find them. But here's the basic argument. All men are mortal. Aristotle is a man, therefore he must be mortal. Okay, we use the therefore here. But not all arguments are that clear. We'll have to take a little bit of understanding and thought through this, but we will get through and understand arguments and other things and types of arguments that will help us be better logical thinkers, better in able to have concise thoughts and critically minded. Now, we're not trying to criticize people with critical mindedness. We're just trying to understand things better and be more aware of what's being said and maybe what is being intended. And sometimes things aren't clear when you're reading. And so one of the best pieces of advice he gives is that when we are looking for an argument, what is their conclusion? Are they stating it anywhere? Are they just making a bunch of statements and blowing like we've seen in other letters to the editor? But we need to ask, what claim is the writer or speaking, or is the speaker trying to persuade me to believe? What are they trying to do here? And recognize their prescription. That is, if they're called, what is their call to action? And if they're just venting and throwing out words, if they're just having verbal spillage, verbal vomit, then they're not really doing much. Look for the conclusion first when you're searching out arguments in these assignments. Okay, and then also arguments versus persuasion, as I mentioned before, are arguments that we're doing in critical thinking. We're not doing rhetoric here. That is the art of persuasion. We're not persuading people. We're just presenting arguments, making claims, and giving really short clip ideas of these things. We're not trying to get everyone to agree with us or persuade them or manipulate them in any way. We're doing something very different. There is an emotional language that people use, and sometimes lies can persuade people to do things, but a good argument needs to show that a claim is worthy of acceptance and is based on truth and real facts. Okay, we may not have all of those all the time, but we have to come to some form of conclusion. There are some things we just can't prove, but there's evidences for them, and we need to work with that. So, the presentation of a good argument can sometimes be psychologically compelling. And there are times when persuasion through psychological or emotional appeals is appropriate. But again, I said that's really left for rhetoric, where they're using pathos, ethos, and logos. Here, we are staying basically with this last one, logos. We're just talking about the words, the word of things, and the claims. Now, we'll probably have you can use an argument. You can certainly get all passionate about an argument, and you can be very ethical and should be about them. But that's not the goal in this class. We're just looking at the argument itself. Okay? Persuading and arguing in the critical thinking sense are distinct and very different functions. So we need to recognize that. And then lastly, arguments are often difficult to figure out. Okay, they're embedded in a thicket of other sentences and serve maybe other functions, and it's hard to find the argument. That's why you look for the conclusion first and try to figure it out. So to figure it out, the best thing to do is learn it well. And I think that's sometimes what we are hesitant to do because it takes time. I told someone today, I can't sit there for hours on time. I need to get out and throw rocks or something. I need to run but you know what? When we're thinking, and we're not going to do it all at once. That's why we're taking time at this in these different videos. But the central task is to understand what the argument is and find the conclusion, identify it and the premises without getting lost in all the diarrhea of the mouth that some people write. So there's a couple assignments here to challenge you to find the argument. Read through the chapter, and good luck to you. Email me if you have a need of any help. I'd be glad to help you.